Love has always carried a shadow, a whisper that not every embrace is genuine, not every touch is rooted in truth. Sometimes, affection is not love at all, but hunger disguised as tenderness, possession wrapped in the language of romance. To discern the difference requires not just longing, but vision, the kind of vision Carl Jung spoke of, where one learns to see not only the light in another, but the hidden shadows they project. A man who uses does not always appear as a predator. Often he arrives as a dream. His words soothe, his presence intoxicates, his timing feels fated. Yet beneath this mask lies a current, subtle but undeniable, where the center of gravity is never us, but always him. You feel it, even if you cannot name it, the imbalance, the silent extraction of your energy, your time, your softness, as though you are a well he drinks from without ever replenishing. This is where feminine empowerment meets the raw terrain of psychology. For a woman's greatest weapon is not resistance, but perception, to see clearly when the heart longs to blur the edges. This is the crucible of strength. A man may project devotion, but projection is not reality. As Jung warned, what we project blinds us to truth. And so many women project their longing for love onto men who merely reflect desire, not devotion. The signs that he is using you are not always in grand betrayals. They are quieter, more insidious. They live in the silences where he does not ask how you feel, in the moments when your boundaries are bent for his comfort, in the choices where he is always the center and you are always orbiting. To recognize this is not cynicism. It is self-preservation. The Stoics believe that clarity is freedom. And here, clarity means stripping away the illusion that affection equals love or that intimacy equals commitment. A strong mind, a strong woman, sees that there's a vast gulf between being desired and being cherished, between being used and being loved. And so the journey begins, not to accuse, but to awaken, to learn how to see the signs that separate hunger from love, manipulation from devotion, and illusion from truth. For when you see them, you are no longer a captive of his shadow. You are the sovereign of your own. But notice the silence between his words. It is not the silence of intimacy, nor the hush that follows awe. It is the silence of absence, the emptiness of someone who's built a mask so polished it blinds you. Carl Jung called this a persona, the false face we were to gain approval, to extract value, to appear worthy of affection without ever offering the naked truth of our soul. And when you lean too close, when you attempt to touch the man beneath the mask, he retreats, not out of fear of losing you, but out of fear of losing control. For a man who uses rather than loves does not seek union. He seeks possession. He craves the way your presence fills his hollowness, the way your tenderness makes him feel alive, the way your loyalty shields him from facing his own fractured shadow. Yet shadows do not stay buried forever. The Stoics knew this, that a man unwilling to wrestle with himself would demand that others fight his battles for him. So he drains you quietly, imperceptibly, until one day you realize that the radiance you gave him has left you dim, that the laughter you poured into his emptiness has left you hushed, that his hunger was never for you as a person, but for what you could provide, a balm for a wound he refuses to heal. And here lies the cruelest paradox. The more you give, the less he respects. The more you pour, the thirstier he becomes. You think you are tending to love, when in truth you are feeding the endless appetite of ego. But step back, and you will see the archetype at play. He is not the lover, but the trickster, the one who charms with firelight, who seduces with promises, who smiles like devotion while hiding the knife of self-interest. Every gesture he makes, every touch he offers, is tethered not to union, but to transaction. And if you close your eyes long enough, if you sink into the rhythm of his embrace, you will feel it, the dissonance, the strange hollowness in moments that should feel sacred, the quiet absence of reciprocity when you bare your soul. This is not love, it is consumption. And still, many women confuse one for the other, because they have been taught to endure, to sacrifice, to equate attention with devotion. But Jung reminds us, what you accept unconsciously becomes your fate. And so the question falls back to you, heavy as thunder in the chest. Do you see the mask for what it is? Or do you close your eyes and pretend it is love? There is a moment every woman feels, though she may try to ignore it. A subtle fracture in the rhythm of connection. It comes not in thunder, but in whispers, when his eyes glaze as you speak, when his embrace feels timed, when his presence is warm but never rooted. This fracture is the first sign, though not yet named, that you are not being loved, but used. For love leans in, attentive, curious, endlessly drawn to the inner world of the beloved. But when he is only taking, his attention is fleeting, restless, fragile. He listens not to understand, but to maintain his access. He mirrors just enough tenderness to keep you anchored, while his soul stays far, unreachable, untouchable. Jung would call this a projection. He casts onto you the image of what he cannot yet integrate within himself. If he feels weak, he projects strength onto you and drains it. If he feels unloved, he projects worthiness onto you and feeds on it. He is not seeking union, but balance borrowed at your expense. And you, unknowingly, become the vessel, the sacred chalice into which he pours his unmet longings. The anima, the feminine he cannot face within his own depths, becomes externalized, embodied in you. He clings to you not because he cherishes your soul, but because you are his mirror, his bandage, his escape from shadow. But mirrors are not meant to be prisons. You are not meant to carry the weight of his unlived life. For this is the paradox of the one who uses. He takes not because you are ordinary, but because you are luminous, because your light makes his darkness less terrifying, because your love feels like redemption, even if he has no intention of redeeming himself. And if you stand still long enough, if you listen not to his words but to the silence beneath them, you will hear the truth. His affection is not anchored in love, but in survival. He is not with you because he chooses you. He is with you because he cannot yet choose himself. This is a shadow of dependency disguised as desire. It feels intoxicating, but it is hollow. It feels urgent, but it is empty. And deep down, your body knows. It always knows. When he takes from you, he does not always reach with hands. Sometimes the taking is invisible, a siphoning of your energy, your attention, your sacred fire. He studies your giving nature like a seasoned thief, learning the subtle openings where your compassion becomes your weakness. This is not love. Love does not consume, it nourishes. Love is not hunger, it is wholeness meeting wholeness. But when he uses you, his presence becomes a quiet erosion, like water dripping against stone, shaping you into something smaller, softer, more pliable to his needs. Jung wrote that the shadow, when unacknowledged, seeks hosts outside the self. The man who refuses to meet his own wounds will use another as their container. And if you stand before him with open heart and unguarded trust, he will pour into you all that he cannot face, his shame, his inadequacy, his fear of abandonment. He will then call this intimacy. But it is not. It is dependency dressed in romance. You will notice the imbalance in moments of silence, when your tears meet the floor and he does not reach for you, when your voice trembles with longing and he hears only the chants to keep you tethered, not the cry of your soul. When you give endlessly, and the return is not love but expectation, an unspoken demand that you never stop pouring. And the tragedy is this: he does not always know he is doing it. He is not a monster, but a man at war with his inner void. Yet intent does not erase impact. Even the unconscious wound cuts deep. This is the archetype of the devourer, the man who takes not with malice, but with emptiness. And you, radiant in your feminine heart, may feel drawn to heal, to mend, to love enough for both. But the one who uses cannot be healed by sacrifice. The more you give, the more he consumes. The more you bend, the less he sees you as sacred. Because what is easily surrendered is rarely cherished. The danger lies not in his hunger, but in your silence. Every time you swallow your truth, every time you deny the ache in your chest, you abandon yourself in the name of staying wanted. And this is the deepest betrayal, not of him, but of you. For the strong feminine knows this. You are not meant to be a vessel for a man's unfinished battles. You are not meant to be a home for shadows he refuses to face. You are not meant to be consumed. You are meant to be met. The cycle begins in silence. A silence that is not peace, but a suffocating pause where your truth lies buried beneath fear. You feel imbalance, but the words catch in your throat, as though naming the wound will make it real. This is how women abandon themselves, not in one dramatic act, but in small, repeated surrenders. Each time she forgives without recognition. Each time she stays though her body aches to leave. Each time she chooses harmony over honesty. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the marriage of opposites, the conscious and unconscious, the light and shadow, the masculine and feminine within. But the woman bound to a man who uses her is trapped in half a union. Her giving nature is exalted, her boundaries exiled, her compassion shines, her anger is disowned. She becomes lopsided in spirit, her soul bending under the weight of imbalance. And the man who feeds on her light, he thrives in this distortion. For as long as you deny the shadow in yourself, you will tolerate the shadow in him. You will call his neglect stress. You will call his absence distance. You will call his exploitation love. But in truth, you are clinging to illusion, the way a child clings to the dream of a father who never truly arrives. This is a trap. The feminine forgets her own sovereignty. She mistakes her longing to heal him for evidence that she is loved. She confuses being needed with being cherished. And so she pours and pours and pours until her own well runs dry. Yet here lies a paradox. The very shadow she avoids within herself is the key to her liberation. The anger she swallows, it is the voice of her boundaries. The loneliness she denies, it is a mirror of her unmet needs. The rage she feels when used, it is a fire of her inner warrior, demanding to be seen. The Stoics knew this truth. You cannot control the hunger of another, but you can control what you offer as feast. You can refuse to be the banquet for a man's unhealed wounds. You can choose self-command over self-abandonment. And so the path out of this cycle is not through changing him, but through reclaiming yourself. When you embrace the shadow within, the part of you that demands, that resists, that refuses, you no longer serve as prey. You become whole, and wholeness cannot be used. He cloaks himself in charm. His words arrive like velvet, soft enough to soothe your suspicion, sweet enough to numb your intuition. He knows how to touch your hand at the precise moment, when doubt flickers across your face, how to whisper promises that dissolve like smoke, the moment they reach the air. This is the mask of the narcissistic archetype. It is not love that he offers, but performance. He mirrors your desires, not because he shares them, but because reflection is easier than authenticity. In Jungian language, he becomes a trickster, a shapeshifter who survives by deception, feeding not on your heart, but on your belief in him. And you, the feminine, so hungry for depth, so aching for connection, fall into the illusion. You begin to confuse appearance with essence. You convince yourself that love is simply delayed, that tenderness is simply waiting for its moment to arrive. But notice this. His charm exists most vividly when you are about to leave, when he feels your grip loosen. His theater comes alive. Suddenly, he is attentive. Suddenly, he is passionate. Suddenly, he remembers how to touch your soul. It is not love, it is survival. The predator flattering the prey to keep it still. The Stoics warned, do not value words more than actions. A man's essence is not in what he says when he fears losing you, but in what he does when he believes you will stay. And if his consistency evaporates when the threat disappears, what you are left with is not love, but manipulation. The feminine psyche must pierce this veil. It must learn to see not only the mask, but the emptiness behind it. For this emptiness cannot sustain love, only extraction. And the woman who consents to be extracted from is slowly bled of her own radiance, while believing she is being adored. Ask yourself, does his presence nourish you when the world is quiet, when no performance is required, when there are no witnesses to impress? Or is his love only alive in the moments when you threaten to leave? If so, you are not in the arms of devotion, but in the grip of a shadow. This is the moment where illusion cracks. For when you finally dare to see through his charm, you awaken to your own, the charm of your silence, your discernment, your refusal to be enchanted by masks. And in this awakening, his power dissolves. Silence can be sacred, but his silence is not. It is not the silence of stillness, nor the silence of deep presence. It is the silence of absence, the silence of someone who withdraws, not to renew himself, but to punish you. He withholds affection as a weapon. He disappears when your soul longs for closeness. His absence is not distance with purpose. It is distance with cruelty. You feel it in the way your messages float unanswered, in the way your voice falls into an empty void. He turns your need for connection into evidence against you. He calls your longing clingy. He labels your heart too much. And slowly, you begin to doubt your worth. This is the shadow of neglect, and it is among the most insidious. For it does not wound loudly. It seeps into the cracks quietly, convincing you that the fault lies within your yearning. But yearning is not a flaw. It is the feminine essence, the sacred fire of Eros within you. Carl Jung spoke of projection, and here it reveals itself. He projects his emptiness onto you. He takes his inability to love deeply and turns it into your supposed flaw. In truth, it is not that you love too much. It is that he cannot love enough. The Stoics reminded, you are not disturbed by things, but by the view you take of them. And yet, when neglect is repeated long enough, even the strongest woman begins to take his absence as proof of her inadequacy. This is how the shadow manipulates. It erodes self-worth quietly until she is trained to accept scraps of affection, as if they were a feast. But the archetypal feminine cannot thrive on scraps. It was never designed for starvation. It is vast, abundant, overflowing with capacity to love. And when such a heart is bound to a man, who feeds its silence instead of presence, she withers in spirit. The flower bends not because the soil was wrong, but because the gardener never cared to water it. You must ask yourself, is his silence a sanctuary or a prison? Does his distance make you grow, or does it reduce you into fragments of yourself? For a man who truly loves will lean into your longing, not shame it. He will meet your yearning, not weaponize it. The truth is brutal, but it is freeing. Neglect is not love. Absence is not devotion. Withholding is not depth. It is exploitation cloaked in silence. And when you finally learn to name the shadow, you begin the slow resurrection of your worth. You remember that your desire for closeness is not weakness, but power, the very force that births intimacy. the flame that burns away the illusions of false love. Every story of being used reaches the same ending, a quiet collapse of the spirit. Not all at once, but slowly, as if the soul itself is dissolving drop by drop. A woman who was once radiant, alive with laughter and flame, finds herself walking like a shadow of who she once was. This is the aftermath of exploitation. It does not just wound the heart, it distorts identity. Her anima, the sacred feminine force within, once expansive and fluid, shrinks into silence. Her worth becomes a currency spent recklessly on a man who never intended to invest in her soul. But here is the paradox. Within this breaking lies the possibility of awakening. Jung taught that the shadow, when faced with courage, becomes a doorway to individuation. And so the woman, standing in the ruins of false love, begins to see clearly. She realizes that being used was never about her lack of value, but about his lack of depth. The hollow cannot nourish the whole. The broken cannot sustain the infinite. T is here, in the silence after collapse, that she encounters herself again. Her longing for love, once distorted into shame, is revealed to be holy. Her desire for connection, once mocked as too much, is revealed as her gift. And in this recognition, her flame rekindles. The Stoics whispered, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." She cannot change his shadow, but she can refuse to let his shadow devour her light. She can turn away, not in bitterness, but in sacred refusal. Refusal to be diminished, refusal to be drained, refusal to live as a source of fuel for someone else's emptiness. And so the cycle breaks. The archetype of the wounded feminine transforms into the sovereign feminine. No longer waiting to be chosen, she chooses herself. No longer mistaking neglect for love, she demands presence. No longer feeding the hollow, she seeks the whole. The truth emerges with crystalline clarity. If he is only using you, then his love was never yours to hold. But your love, your fierce, radiant, unyielding love, is yours to reclaim. And when reclaimed, it becomes a force greater than deception, greater than absence, greater than the shadow that tried to consume it. For the woman who sees through illusion cannot be used again. She has walked through the fire of false love and returned carrying her own crown. Her worth is no longer negotiable. Her soul is no longer for rent. She becomes untouchable, not because she has closed her heart, but because she finally knows its value. This is the liberation the shadow was hiding all along. The pain of being used becomes the portal to the power of being whole. And once whole, she no longer asks, "Does he love me?" Instead, she whispers, "Does he love me?" Instead, she whispers, "Do I love myself enough to walk away from what isn't love?"